Number 5. You're next. Hey, family dinners are always a bit awkward, aren't they? You know, trying to get the gravy passed to you, trying to avoid an argument with your uncle about your career, and trying to elude the vicious sickos that are hunting you and your family for sport. You're Next is a 2011 slasher directed by Adam Wingard, who also blessed us with Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the finest films ever made. Made on a humble $1 million budget, You're Next is a horror movie that brings it to the absolute basics. One house, one troubled family, and 3 very dangerous psychopaths. An estranged family is meeting for a reunion at their summer home in the rural deep south, and newcomer to the family, Erin, is nervous to be introduced officially as her boyfriend's long-term partner. Now, tensions are high enough with the usual family drama before the first crossbow bolt pierces the window, as the family is being hunted by a relentless pack of bloodthirsty animal mask-wearing lunatics who seem to be doing this whole thing just for kicks. Watch the family fall apart under pressure, metaphorically and uncomfortably literally, as they're picked off one by one by their sick predators, until one of them starts to rise up unexpectedly against their tormentors. Now, if you were a fan of the Hotline Miami games, this is probably as close as you're ever going to get to a movie for that 80s splatter feel and all the animal mask wearing lunatics. You're Next feels like a movie that got time traveled from 1984 in the best way. It's a throwback to the golden age of B-horror movies. Wet, gross, stupid, and in the darkest ways, really funny. This movie's almost a dysfunctional family comedy, if you can call it that. It's sinister, sick, gruesome, and hilarious, has an absolutely great sense of style, really cool soundtrack, and I guarantee you the main song from the movie is gonna get stuck in your head for weeks afterwards. Definitely check You're Next out if you're looking for some fluffy horror fun. I've got a DVD at home if you want to borrow it. Now, hey ghouls and goblins, you already know that the best place for the scary video— Hey ghouls and goblins, you already know the best place for scary videos on the web is right here, but if somehow you didn't know that, always a good time to learn, so why don't you subscribe so you never miss a scare. Number 4. The Color Out of Space. When we think H.P. Lovecraft, we tend to think of giant squid monsters and incomprehensible madness. Well, this movie's got one of those in folds, and it's not the squid monster. The Color Out of Space is a 2019 horror movie directed by Richard Stanley, adapting the H.P. Lovecraft story of the exact same name, but modernizing it slightly, bringing it up to the 21st century. The story details a father moving his family to his late father's farm, escaping the bright lights and humdrum of city life, moving to his hometown of Arkham, the exceedingly cursed city from Lovecraft's writings. What should be a breath of fresh air and lovely times in the cottage turns to a nightmare when an asteroid falls to the farm, releasing with it a mysterious color that seeps into the farmland. A color out of space, if you will. It affects the minds of everyone around the farm, all the animals, and begins to seep into the water and drive everyone to incomprehensible madness. Nick Cage plays the patriarch of the Gardner family, and let me tell you, there could not possibly have been a better actor for the lead in a movie about slowly going mad. I mean, Nick Cage on his absolute best day already seems like he's about 2 screws short of absolute madness, so watching him in this is a treat. You spend the entire time wondering if the insanity is taking him over and consuming his brain, or if that's just how Nicolas Cage talks and he thinks he's doing a New England accent right now. Color Out of Space builds really slowly, leaving you on edge the entire time, and when the madness sets in, it sets in hard as you painfully watch the farmstead fall, desperate that maybe, just maybe, someone will pull through against the immeasurable horror of some entity beyond the cosmos. It captures Lovecraft's writing effortlessly and brings it to the modern age flawlessly, with all the blood and insanity you could hope for. Number 3. The Void. Our next entry on this list is The Void, a 2016 horror flick by Steven Kostanski, another Lovecraft horror movie. Your host has a little bit of a bias, and this one's Canadian made, so I have to include it based on that alone. It also totally rocks, so there is that. The Void is another flick that feels like it time traveled through the mid-80s, and maybe it's just my personal tastes, but that is very much a good thing. The Void seems like the kind of thing John Carpenter would have slapped his name on. A small-town deputy has his night wildly disturbed when he finds someone suffering from violent injuries, and after taking him to the local hospital, finds himself trapped in the hospital with his ex-wife, a nurse, who's dealing with a crisis of her own, as the hospital is being overrun by an onslaught of mysterious injuries and madness. The two estranged lovers find themselves caught in a blood-soaked conflict between a sinister cult and some entity that appears able to revive the dead, albeit a bit twisted into horrifying monstrosities of flesh and bone. Now, if you're like me and you think The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made, The Void feels like it could be its unofficial sequel. It's better than the actual sequel prequel to The Thing that they made. The special effects on the monsters are fantastic. If you're the kind of ghoul who loves puppets, prosthetics, and gallons worth of corn syrup blood, The Void has everything you are looking for in those 3 spades. And the plot is fun, and it has some good twists and turns, but let's be honest here. You're watching this one because it's got very gross monsters and really cool Lovecraft-inspired mythos of cults and a great god beyond the stars. You want my advice? Grab a friend or 2, order the largest, greasiest pizza your local favorite spot has, grab a 2-liter of something carbonated, and have a great Friday night with this one. The Void to me is what a good horror movie should be. Gross, scary, a little stupid, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Hush. Okay, enough movies about incomprehensible horrors from beyond the stars. Let's reel it in a bit, and let's get back to some comprehensible horror. Home invasion. Lock those doors. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the volume up. Hush is a 2016 slasher home invasion movie coming to us from Blumhouse horror icon Mike Flanagan, director of a ton of amazing horror projects like Oculus, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of shows, and Hush is no exception to that rule. A deaf and mute horror writer, that's why I did that before, who lives alone with her cat in the woods with a few isolated neighbors around her, becomes the unwilling target in the most dangerous game when a twisted hunter decides to make her his prey. After hunting her neighbor with a crossbow, he sets his sight on her next. When he learns that his next victim is deaf and mute, it seems like he finds himself thrilled at the possibility of a challenge. Now, Hush could have very easily just been your run-of-the-mill slasher home invasion movie, but it stands a lot taller than that with some incredibly fantastic sound design. I mean, I would hope so, given the premise of the movie and the name of the movie. The movie is so tense and saves its sounds really effectively for when it knows it's going to be the scariest. Makes it a lot scarier than the usual horror movies with a bombastic booming soundtrack and tons of scare hordes. It lets you really breathe in the tension. The cat and mouse game between the protagonist Maddie and the unnamed hunter feels deeply personal, putting you smack dab in the middle of it, chewing your fingernails the entire time as you hope for the best. Please check out Hush. Now, number 1, Green Room. Coming in at our number 1 spot is one of my favorite horror thrillers of all time, Green Room. An A24 horror classic before that was even a cool thing to describe your movie as. A failing Midwestern punk band are trying to hit it big while traveling the Northwest, barely scraping by on instant ramen and van life when they agree to play a gig at a rural roadhouse. Absolutely thrilled at the prospect of getting paid for once, the band takes the gig without asking any questions, only to swiftly discover upon arriving that they are in bad company. The bar is ran and owned by a skinhead gang who don't take kindly to them whatsoever. After the bassist witnesses a crime in the eponymous Green Room, the band is trapped by the gang who refuses to let them leave. Alive. From here, the movie turns into a sort of reverse home invasion as the band tries desperately to escape the clutches of the gang by any means necessary. Green Room is tense. You are going to feel like you are trapped in there with them. If you've ever survived a local DIY show basement, then the sights of Green Room will look pretty familiar to you. Setting a high-octane horror movie in such a hostile environment that you'll recognize makes it feel all the more real. You know, I've seen countless horror movies in haunted houses, but I can't name that many in a bar basement. Green Room is horror at some of its best, taking a concept I guarantee you haven't seen before and exploring it beyond just a simple bloody slasher. Fantastic camera work, dark humor, and a gripping plot with lovable characters and truly hateable villains. We are 3 paragraphs into me talking about this, and I haven't even dropped the biggest bomb, which is that the leader of the skinhead gang is played by Sir Patrick Stewart in one of his most unhinged roles ever since maybe American Dad. I'd say he steals this thing, but honestly everybody delivers. Anton Yelchin also delivers one of the best performances of his career as the band's weary, tortured bassist. Go into Green Room expecting a super tense, shockingly gory, but amazing horror movie if you can brave it. Just make sure you get a stamp on your wrist so you can leave.
Number 5, Incantation. Apparently right now it's the ranking for the most watched non-English horror film worldwide, with over 10 million hours watching and rising. That's pretty sick right there, starting off, you know? Obviously I couldn't leave this one off the list with a reputation like that, so here we go. Incantation is a 2022 Taiwanese found footage supernatural horror film directed by Kevin Ko and co-written by Kevin and Chang Shiwei. Released in Taiwan March 18th, 2022, it became the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film ever made. Yeah, it's received international distribution from Netflix. Hey, Netflix, so good. Since July 8th, 2022. Here's the plot. A woman named Lee Ronan narrates the film, imploring the audience to memorize an insignia and chant chant an incantation to bless them and lift a curse on her 6-year-old daughter Dodo. The insignia and incantation are interspersed frequently throughout the film to encourage the viewer to pray along with it. Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. Ronan, her boyfriend Dom, and Dom's cousin Yuan break a religious taboo while documenting a ritual for their internet channel. They go to a remote village of Dom and Yuan's relatives who practice a religion worshipping an ancestral deity called Mother Buddha. The clan asks the three to submit their names with the incantation to Mother Buddha. And here we go. That night, the group spy on the clan performing a ritual where a young girl seems to be willingly prepared for sacrifice. The girl, whose body is covered completely head to toe in runes, was left in front of a tunnel which the clan said is forbidden. Ronan waits for the girl while Dom and Yuan enter the tunnel. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not good. Yuan later emerges screaming and Dawn seemingly lifeless. Ronan and Dodo's house soon becomes infested by unexplained ghostly activities and Dodo is disturbed by a shadowy presence. They bring her to a shrine where a priest agrees to exorcise Dodo. Yunan later becomes possessed and sends copies of the tunnel footage. That's horrifying. Yeah. Just Chuck Liddelling yourself on a computer desk. Yeah, you're definitely gonna need a Tylenol after that one. Ouch. The film ends with some audience participation, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but after watching this, I kinda understand why it's rated what it's rated. Yeah, very scary, but also really good. As always, dudes, if you like what we do here too, hit the like button or leave us a comment down below. Which 2022 horror film has you hiding behind the covers? Number 4. Horror in High Desert. Horror in High Desert is a 2021 American film written, produced, and directed by Dutch Marek in a pseudo-documentary format featuring found footage elements about the mysterious disappearance of a hiker in Nevada. An experienced outdoorsman vanishes in North Nevada while on an outdoor excursion. On the 3-year anniversary of his disappearance, his friends and loved ones recall the events leading up to the disappearance and for the first time speak about what they think actually happened. The first part focuses on the police report of hiker Gary Hinge. Toward the end of July 2017, Gary hiked to an unspecified area in the Mojave Desert, and the police conduct a search based on the last GPS of location on Gary's cell phone. As time goes by, the media stop reporting, and a private investigator named Bill is asked to investigate so that the case would not be abandoned. The investigation then focuses on clues in the last of the published videos. Gary appears in frame from his home, narrating a very unusual experience. The footage found reveals that Gary was able to find his way back to some mystery cabin. There he hears chanting that seems to be human-like, and he eventually is attacked and the camera stops recording. Reporter and the private investigator speculate that who or what might have attacked the hiker. It is mentioned that the police have made this footage public in the hope that someone in the audience might offer some additional clues which spark a series of theories such as Area 51, atomic testing, satanic rituals, and of course, extraterrestrials. Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. I didn't even see that thing. They really do a good job at involving the audience in the experience by asking them to help continue the search, which makes the film seem so real but not real at the same time, you know? Hey, great film. And I say aliens, that was definitely an alien, you know? I'm the alien guy, I'm just saying. Number 3, Dashcam. Dashcam is a 2021 computer screen horror film directed by Rob Savage and written by Gemma Hurley, Jed Shepard, and Savage. The entire film is shot from the perspective of the main character's handheld iPhone or the Dashcam in her car as she live streams her actions for viewers whose comments are displayed. Kinda hard to read and watch at the same time, but it really makes it scarier, trust me. The film, of course, is produced by Blumhouse Productions, so you know it's gonna slap. Dashcam premiered at the 2021 Toronto International Film Festival in September 2021, where it was named second runner-up for the People's Choice Award. The plot: Annie Hardy is a right-wing internet personality who live streams from her car, making music and using her viewers' comments as lyrics. Tired of COVID-19 restrictions and homelessness in Los Angeles, Annie books a flight to London. There, she pays a visit to her former bandmate Stretch, who now works as a delivery driver. When she arrives at the restaurant, Annie is surprised to find it abandoned before she encounters the owner, who offers Annie huge money to apparently transfer transport an old woman, Angela, to an undisclosed location. Annie accepts the offer, of course, and drives with Angela while live streaming everything to her fans. And this is where it gets terrifying. Angela then vanishes into a nearby forest, and the group find her standing atop of a tree, to which Angela just floats down to the ground before attacking the group, showing them her supernatural abilities. Angela hunts them down, and after a terrifying scene that I'm not going to spoil, a humanoidish creature emerges out of Angela, where it now hunts for Annie.
Okay, Angela, this lady's gonna just take you to some friends, okay?
Nope.
Yeah, I would be saying a big nope, too. Hell no, I'm not driving some scary old lady in the middle of the night. That's like rookie horror film nonsense right there. Great movie though, great movie. Very scary. Number 2, Spree. Spree is a 2020 American comedy horror film directed by Eugene Kotlyarenko. The gonzo-style satire follows a social media obsessed rideshare driver played by Joe Keery, who we all love. In an attempt to become viral, he live streams himself murdering his passengers. Ooh, it's a challenge of a role, I'd say. The film also stars David Arquette, Kyle Mooney, and Misha Barton. It was executively produced by Drake. That's saying something right there. Spree premiered in 2020 at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival and was released theatrically on video on demand in 2020. The film received mixed reviews, though critics praised Keery's performance and the film's premise. I really like this movie. I think it's a good representation of 2020 culture, you know? With phones in our hand every second, everybody trying to go viral, doing anything you can for clout. This movie does just that. Okay. Here's the plot. A young man named Kurt is obsessed with being a social media star and becoming viral. Kurt finds work as a driver for a rideshare app called Spree, then fits out his car with cameras and begins a new live stream titled The Lesson, where he instructs viewers on how to become famous on social media. Kurt starts picking up passengers one by one and killing them off with poison that he politely offers riders, as well as a bunch of creative, clout-chasing, performance heinous acts. You'll see. Kurt is then stopped by 2 police officers who grow suspicious of him. It's revealed that Kurt's murders have already become public, with Kurt being nicknamed the Rideshare Killer. After police are unable to identify him, Kurt tries to flee, but he too is pursued by police, forcing him to crash his car through a homeless camp. With Kurt's murders becoming more well known online, Spree is temporarily shut down to allow an investigation to take place. Kurt tries to kill Jessie, the other character, but she pins him to the wall with her car and then in turn takes his phone and continues the social media presence which he started. Jessie then becomes a nationwide star after taking credit for Kurt's demise and capture surrounding the infamous rideshare killer. Yeah, I really like this movie. It's like super campy and over the top. It's serious at times, but also very gory. Joe Keery kills it with this role, and I feel like if you were needing a break from that Stranger Things character, yeah, we found it. You did very well, my friend. Very terrifying. And coming in at the number 1 spot, VHS 94. VHS 94 is a 2021 American found footage horror anthology film and the 4th installment in the VHS series. If you haven't seen these movies, they're great. Give them a shot. They're almost shot like a bunch of stories from the same era in one film. Like little mini true or false found footage movies that make the audience ask, is this campy or did this really happen? The film originates from a screenplay written by David Bruckner and Brad Miska. The overarching plot follows a police SWAT team who stumble upon a sinister cult compound and its collection of VHS tapes and what's on them. Following this series' cult origins around film festivals, VHS 94 has its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 26, 2021 and was also screened at the Beyond Fest on October 4th the same year. The film was released as a Shudder original film via Shudder, October 6, 2021, and later that month, Shudder announced that it had become the platform's biggest movie premiere in its history, with record-breaking viewership numbers. That's awesome. Horror movies? Let's go. It's great stuff. These films are awesome. Okay, here's some plots. A SWAT team gets a tip and investigates a prison cell-like haunted house with various static screens playing different found footage. The first is a Channel 6 news reporter, Holly Marciano, and her cameraman, Jeff. They are filming a story about the Rat Man, a local legend who has supposedly been living in the town's storm drains. After interviewing several citizens who have reportedly witnessed the creature to gain information, the duo descend into the storm drain where they find several homeless encampments. While filming, they are approached by a man covered in black goop slime, and he murmurs, "Ratma." They attempt to flee, but they are captured by other similar residents of the sewers. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything else because I really like the VHS series and the mini stories that they do. They're absolutely terrifying. The vampire part is the scariest part. I'm not spoiling anything. Check it out.
In at number 5 we have The Descent, 2005. First up we have The Descent, a British film from 2005 about a caving exhibition. We follow a group of 7 women exploring a cave that's never been explored before. The only way out of the cave is through it, so they travel deeper and deeper until they're trapped deep underground. We watch as one by one they meet a horrible fate, some accidental climbing mistakes, others descending into madness. They soon find out they are not alone in the cave and are being pursued by terrifying hordes of crawlers, but what we might today call Wendigo. They are a race of cave-dwelling humanoids who have adapted to near-constant darkness and lost any previous trace of humanity they may have had, becoming monsters in the process. The girls start to turn on each other while they struggle to survive in the darkness. They created 2 different endings for this film after deciding that the British ending was too dark for the US audience. In the US ending, our main character wakes up in the cave and crawls to the surface back to her car. When she is driving away, she pulls over and vomits, and when she leans back in the car, she is startled by the ghost of Juno sitting in the passenger seat. However, in the British version they reveal that this was all a trick of her mind, and she wakes up back in the cave, having never escaped at all. The film ends with the screams of the crawlers getting louder as they surround her. This one is enough to make anyone scared of the dark. Coming in at number 4 we have Ringu, 1998, aka The Ring. We have all heard about the adaptation of The Ring, but have you seen the original, more horrifying one, Ringu? The story follows a reporter and her ex-husband as they investigate the sudden death of her niece, who died of a sudden heart failure with an unnaturally horrified expression on her face. She then finds out that her niece recently visited a cabin with her friends. Each of them had died the exact same way on the exact same night. She visits the cabin to find out what could have caused them all to die so suddenly when she finds the unlabeled tape. After watching the tape, she understands that they had all been cursed as she was now. Things become more tense when Reiku's young son watches the tape, starting the 1-week countdown before he too dies. She has to break the curse or she and everyone she cares about will die in less than a week. Their discovery takes them to a volcanic island where they can discover that the video has a connection to a psychic who died 30 years ago and her child. In the end, they discover that the only way to break the curse is to copy it and show it to someone else, passing it on to them, dooming them instead of you. It's a good thing no one has a VHS player anymore. In at number 3 we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. This one is sure to keep you up at night. A Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of teenagers battling a killer who attacks in their dreams. We follow Nancy and her friends trying to figure out why they're being hunted and how to stop it. This was our first introduction to the infamous Freddy Krueger, a killer who is badly burned all over his body. He uses a gloved hand with razors to kill his victims. Nowadays we all know who Freddy Krueger is, but in 1984 a killer who hunts you in your dreams was truly terrifying. Nancy has to struggle to stay awake throughout the filmmaking, depending on caffeine to keep her awake for days on end. They slowly discover that they are being hunted due to their parents being involved with Freddy's death. Nancy's mum revealed Krueger was an insane child murderer who had been released on a technicality and then burned alive by parents living on their street seeking vigilante justice. They attempt to bring Krueger out of the dream so they can kill him in the physical world. Could you stay awake for 7 days to avoid Freddy? I couldn't. In at number 2 we have Psycho, 1960. This was the original slasher film. When Psycho premiered in 1960, the audiences were screaming in horror. They could not believe their eyes. It took the world by storm and instantly became a classic for horror lovers. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to shock audiences and do something no one else had ever done before. The audience were horrified that Marion Crane, the main character, had been so brutally murdered. Never before had a main character died in a film, and here she was stabbed repeatedly within the first 30 minutes. Hitchcock even received an angry letter from one man claiming his daughter is now refusing to shower thanks to this film. The film continues when Marion's sister starts to wonder where she is. Marion had stolen money from her previous job and was hoping to make a new life when she stumbled into the Bates Motel. Lila hires a private detective to look into the disappearance, but once he goes to the Bates Motel, he too never returns. When Lila and her partner Sam go to visit the house, they see Norman Bates in the window. They go to the police to report all of the mysterious disappearances, where they are told that Norman's mother, has been dead for 10 years. Later it is revealed that Norman Bates had multiple personalities and had been acting as himself and his mother since her death, killing unsuspecting women who visit the motel. It might not seem like much now, but this film was as terrifying and horrific as films came in the 60s and paved the way for the horror genre. Freaked me the out. I saw it at 4. accidentally. And finally, in at number 1, The Conjuring 2013. We're all very familiar with the Conjuring franchise, but did you know that the set of each film is thought to be haunted after many spooky happenings on set? The Conjuring series is based on the real experiences of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, so it makes sense that the spirits that the films are about might not be too happy about it. The first film released in 2013 and followed the story of a family who've just moved into a farmhouse when they start to suspect something is not right. They call in Ed and Lorraine to help save them from spirits within the home. The hauntings do not stop when the camera stopped rolling. Some of the cast members began to notice unexplained bruises over their bodies. Similar to this, the lead actress Vera Farmiga woke up one morning and noticed 3 claw-like scratches on her thigh. She said they didn't hurt, but it looked as though someone with long nails had dragged them over her skin. Vera seems to have got the worst of the hauntings and also woke up between 3 to 4 AM when she began filming. She was a little spooked, as the witching hour is something that has been talked about during the film. Was the set haunted by the original ghosts? I guess we'll never know, but probably.
Number 5. Halloween Ends. But will it though? Cause there's like 46 full-length movies in this universe, isn't there? Hey, and we love them all. Who am I kidding? Halloween Ends is an upcoming American slasher film directed and written by David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, Paul Brad Logan, and Chris Bernier. The current R-rated Halloween trilogy serves as a direct sequel to the 1978 original slasher, with a number of OG actors reprising their roles. It's the 13th installment in the Halloween franchise. Ooh, number 13, huh? The film is set to star the Queen of Screams herself, the legendary Jamie Lee Curtis, Will Patton, Kyle Richards, to name a few. Definitely some peeps reprising the roles from other Halloweens. I see that. I can't wait for this. Most of us have known this franchise, universe, multiverse, whatever you want to call it, our whole lives. Fast walks and jump scares. It's coming to a theater near you very soon, actually. In June 2018, before the release of Halloween 2018, McBride confirmed that he and Green had intended to pitch 2 films that would be shot back to back, but decided against it, waiting to see how the first film was perceived. In 2019, the film's title was announced along with Halloween Kills. The film will be produced by Jason Blum with Blumhouse Productions alongside Rough House, Miramax, and Trancas. Halloween Ends is scheduled to be released October 14th, 2022 by Universal Pictures. It will also stream simultaneously on Peacock for 60 days. I love these movies, man. The acting alone, like how do they act so scared? It's so believable. Just screaming all day, take after take. That's a lot of tea with honey and lemon, isn't it? Less is more always, and I'll definitely be having a night filled with chips, dips, and lots of hands in my face blocking the screen, you know? I'll do my best. That's how I watch scary movies. Just like, I can't see it at all. I'm a huge chicken, I'm not gonna lie. Number 4, Hellraiser. The Hellraiser franchise is back with this sci-fi supernatural horror we all love, which includes 4 films, 6 straight-to-home video films, various comic books and media, all based around the novella by English author Clive Barker titled The Hellbound Heart. The franchise centers around the Cenobites, including the primary antagonist we all love and fear, the infamous Pinhead. Next month, Hellraiser's back. The film is directed by David Bruckner, with screenplay by Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski from a story that they wrote with David Goyer. This project is intended to serve as a reimagining of Clive Barker's 1987 film and the 11th installment of the Hellraiser franchise. The film will follow closely to the source material novella written by Barker, The Hellbound Heart, and the film is going to star Odessa Azion and Jamie Clayton, and is a co-production from the 20th Century Studios, Spyglass Media, and Phantom 4 Films. Plans for a Hellraiser remake was in talks in 2007. However, following the release of Hellraiser Revelations, to secure the rights, they had to hold off a bit. By 2018, after the critical and commercial success of Halloween, Miramax Films confirmed plans of a new Hellraiser project, including a prequel and reboot. The film was greenlit in 2019, with Bruckner directing a script written by Collins and Petrowski, and shooting began September 2021. Hellraiser is scheduled to be released exclusively on Hulu as a Hulu original film this October 7th, 2022. I'm not gonna lie, this looks awesome. I wonder how they had to sit through all the hair and makeup though, you know? Just trying to drink a coffee, but you can't reach your own face. I made a wicked Hellraiser mask for Halloween one year, you know? Just a Jabberwocky's mask, smashed a bunch of nails right through it. Did the trick. Number 3, Dark Harvest. This looks pretty dark and twisted. Dark Harvest is an American upcoming fantasy horror film directed by David Slade and written by Michael Gillio based on the 2006 novel of the same name by Norman Partridge. Scheduled to be released in theaters September 9th, 2022. In early 2019, it was reported New Regency hired David Slade to direct the adaptation of Dark Harvest, with Michael Gillio writing the script and Mac Tolmack and David Mamperl producing. We know some of Slade's movies already, such as Hard Candy, Twilight, Light Eclipse, and Bandersnatch. Great films, you know? Great shots. The plot, here we go. Every fall in a small Midwestern town, a supernatural specter named Sawtooth Jack arises from the cornfields and approaches the town's church, where violent gangs of young boys hungrily await their chance to confront the legendary nightmare in an annual harvest rite of life and death. Richie Shepherd lives in the shadow of his big brother, who won last year's October prize to get his ticket out of town. To prove to himself and his brother, Richie pairs up with the relentless dreamer Kelly Haynes, who will do whatever it takes to escape this dead-end town. Against the rules and against the odds, Richie and Kelly decide to hunt down the legendary nightmare themselves together. Okay, this sounds different. The nickname really shook me though, you know? Sawtooth Jack. Like, first and last names are scary enough sometimes. You don't need a visceral nickname from a cornfield, you know? Very terrifying. I guess we're gonna see this Jack Skellington meets Children of the Corn nightmare in the next couple of weeks, actually. Looks pretty awesome. The concept art alone. Very terrifying. Number 2, Jeepers Creepers Reborn. One of my favorite horror universes. These movies have kept me awake many, many hours. And, well, here we go again. Jeepers Creepers Reborn is an upcoming American horror film directed by Timo Varensola in his Hollywood debut. Written by Sean Michael Argo, it is the 4th film and a reboot in the Jeepers Creepers film series, meant to serve as the first in a planned trilogy set apart from Victor Salva's original trilogy. Okay, so same concept, different vision. I got it. We have a Snyder Cut. I get it. The film is scheduled to be released in the US September 19th, 2022 by Screen Media Films. Now, for the plot. The Horror Hound Festival is being held for the first time in Louisiana. Among the attendees are Chase and his girlfriend Lane, who begins to experience unexplained premonitions and disturbing visions associated with the town's past and the infamous Creeper. Principal photography started shooting in Jackson, Louisiana. Soon after, however, the production was moved to the UK due to the pandemic. Filming in the UK was split into 2 parts, the first in November 2020 at Black Hanger Studios and finished on December. The second filming chunk took place between January and February 2021. The title was officially confirmed as Jeepers Creepers Reborn in February 2021 when Screen Media Films acquired the rights in the US and Canada. At the 2021 European film market, Foresight Unlimited showed a promotional reel of footage for the international sales, and apparently it was pretty scary. Yeah, I can't wait for this one. I love these movies. They're campy, they're cheesy, they're absolutely terrifying. True story, my sister and I were watching the first one as kids and a giant moth flew in front of the porch light. Yeah, just like a 40-foot winged shadow on the wall. All of a sudden, mid-movie. Yeah, that'll keep you up. And number 1, we have Smile. Okay, this one looks the scariest by far, and I'm not sure if it's in the budget or it's just the neighborhood that I live in, but everyone smiles like this, you know? I'm looking forward to watching this, but I don't want to see it, you know? Smile is an upcoming American psychological horror film written and directed by Parker Finn in his feature film debut. It's based on his 2020 short film, Laura Hasn't Slept. Gonna rename that to Kyle Hasn't Slept after watching this one, 100%. Yeah. The film stars Sosie Bacon, Jesse T. Usher, Kyle Gallner, Caitlin Stacey, Cal Penn, and Rob Morgan. Smile will have its world premiere at Fantastic Fest on September 22nd, 2022, and is scheduled to be released in the US September 30th, 2022 by Paramount Pictures. Alright, so we'll get a better idea in the next couple of weekends. Also, which movie do you think of when you see the Paramount logo? You know what I mean? Mine's Grease. Every time I see it, I just feel like Grease Lightning's coming up. I don't know. Okay, now the plot. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. The short film won the Special Jury Recognition Prize for South by Southwest's Midnight Short category. In September 2021, the film was announced under a different title, however, of Something's Wrong. Shooting began October 11th in New Jersey and finished in November. Okay, so a nice little quick turnaround, you know? They had like a one-take kind of day. Yo, imagine walking around and everyone's just smiling like Mr. Burns at you all day. That's horrifying. I think I would just bird box myself and just blindfold up, you know? Just start swinging. Yeah, this looks great. I can't wait. I watched the trailer and then I started seeing people smiling at me on the way home. You know what I mean? Terrifying. What do you think? Number 5. Phoenix Forgotten. Phoenix Forgotten is a 2017 American found footage sci-fi horror directed by Justin Barber in his directorial debut and written by him and T.S. Nolan. Produced by Ridley Scott, the Ridley Scott. The film tells the story of the disappearance of 3 teenagers who set out to find the source of a widely reported 1997 UFO phenomenon known famously as, you guessed it, the Phoenix Lights. We all remember this, don't we? Okay, now the plot. Sophie Bishop and her boyfriend visit Sophie's parents' place in Phoenix, Arizona on the 20th anniversary of her brother's disappearance. In 1997, the family all witnessed the Phoenix Lights during Sophie's 6th birthday, which was, drumroll please, recorded. Several strange lights appear in a formation over the city before being chased by fighter jets. The family is convinced that they have witnessed UFOs via the old recordings, and Sophie now begins to dig a little bit deeper. In the tapes, Sophie's brother Josh begins investigating the Phoenix Lights with the help of his friends Ashley and Mark. Sophie interviews multiple parties regarding the trio's disappearance and the sightings in '97, only to find the group's abandoned car and a camera and one single tape. Sophie views the tape, obviously, showing the beginning of the group's epic journey to find out what caused the Phoenix Lights. We then see what eventually ensues of the poor trio in a horror movie about aliens. Yeah, shocker, right? Or who knows, maybe it has a happy ending. I like this movie a lot for obvious reasons, but it's like really fun, and I like the dated feel with the tapes, you know? As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or even leave us a comment, you know? Number 4, Antrum. Antrum is supposed to be the deadliest movie ever made, and that's what it claims. It's like a fever dream, this movie. Again, not real, but supposedly real. You know? It's a movie. Antrum is proudly a 2018 Canadian horror film. Woo! Go Canada! Written and directed by David Amito and Michael Lacini, the film is divided into 2 parts, an opening and a closing narrative in the form of a mockumentary and a feature film. The mockumentary loosely tells the story of Antrum, a movie released in the late 70s that supposedly had effects on those who watched it. The bulk of the movie then is just kinda moment to moment what kinda happened. Antrum was developed by Amito and Lacini during the development of a separate project in which they were brainstorming scenarios that scared them. Their central idea would later become the basis of Antrum. This idea and concept of what it would be like to watch a supposed, quote, real cursed film. The filmmakers felt like it would make a great horror film, which it does. For the film's occult aspects, the writers studied multiple historical depictions of demons and the devil. It stars Nicole Tompkins and child actor Rowan Smith. Antrum made its world premiere at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival in October 2018 and was nominated for several awards festival to festival. Uncorked Entertainment acquired North American distribution rights, releasing it on video on demand and pretty well all streaming services since like 2019. It received great reviews who praised its uncomfortable atmosphere, its uncomfortable acting, and creativity. Yeah, they kind of nailed it with this one. It's so 70s. Like, it feels like, again, a fevered night terror. Number 3, As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is a 2014 American horror film written and directed by John Eric Dowdle and co-written by his brother Drew. The title refers to the popular paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet. The film is presented to the audience as found footage, following a documentary's crew's experience exploring the catacombs of Paris. The film was produced by Legendary Pictures and distributed by Universal. The film received negative reviews from critics but grossed more than $40 million with a huge profit from only a $5 million budget. The plot. Scarlett Marlowe is a scholar continuing her past father's research for the Philosopher's Stone. Scarlett travels to Paris with 2 friends, and using codes from her research, they solve a riddle leading them with coordinates to the catacombs of Paris. They sneak underground and the group wanders the caves. They encounter cultists, ghosts, visions, you name it. They find a Templar, Assassin's Creed looking tomb and see and read some pretty jarring stuff. Statues in the walls come to life, and it goes all Indiana Jones but like scary. The car scene? Like, yeah, what's that about? That's horrifying and downright disturbing. Dude, this movie is gonna leave you gasping for air, literally. But I really liked this movie. It's shot GoPro style, and I love that humid, dingy cave stuff. Look one way in the dark and then the other way. Yeah, I'm just sweating thinking about that scene. Number 2, The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. This movie is horrifying. If you're down for like old witchy ghost lady vibes on a Friday night, and you like jump scares, we got a winner, folks. A 2014 gem. This American found footage supernatural horror film is a first for the director Adam Robidoux, who co-wrote the screenplay. Set in Virginia, it tells the story of a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's patients who uncover something sinister while documenting one woman. The film was released right around Halloween time, and you can still catch this on like every streaming service. A team of students who want to create a documentary about Deborah Logan, an elderly woman who has Alzheimer's, films and records her daily life. Then Deb starts to act a little bizarre. They notice that her actions defy normal explanations and express something a little bit more supernatural. Things escalate after they record an audio of Deborah talking about sacrifices and snakes. Oh yeah, like real witchy old lady vibes, I'm telling you. After some talk about an ancient ritual that makes people immortal, some dark cultist kind of stuff, and voila, Deb goes on a spree and tries to kidnap them all. They find out that she has quite the sinister history and that maybe she's not a really good fit for the star of a documentary, more like the star of an exorcism. Yeah, like that kind of stuff, you know? GoPro, night visions, old lady witchy standing in dark corners, good old fashioned thrillers, you know? Good for the whole family, right before bedtime, in the dark. And the number one spot, of course, is The Visit. This movie's kind of like the last movie, with all the witchy vibes, but like way more subtle and way more terrifying. Yeah, I don't like when there's like creepy shit just running around in the background shots, right? Like, that's what scares me the most, the background shots. The Visit is a 2015 American found footage comedy horror film written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The film centers around two young siblings, teenager Becca and her kid brother Tyler, who live with their mother, who's had a pretty gruesome past herself. After finding their grandchildren online and wanting to meet them, the kids' grandparents invite them to spend a week at their farmhouse. Aw, how nice. Like a little Hansel and Gretel type stuff. Exactly. The film was released by Universal Pictures and it grossed about $100 million worldwide, against only a $5 million production budget, so yeah, this one killed it. Good job, guys. But it got mixed reviews though. I don't really know why. This movie's like really scary and well done. The plot. The kiddies are getting ready for a 5-day overnighter at the grandparents while their mother Loretta goes on a cruise as a much needed break. Loretta reveals that she has not spoken to her parents for like 15 years. The teens plan to record a documentary film about their visit using a camcorder. It's shot kind of GoPro style with some classic camera falls on the floor, what's in the background type fun. I'm not going to spoil anything in this movie, but if you like screaming things, crawling around all in the middle of the night, yeah, then this movie's definitely worth a watch. Check it out.
Number 5. The Lighthouse. From visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Lighthouse, a harrowing fable that teaches us the importance of respecting personal boundaries and respecting seabirds. Eggers is one of my favorite modern horror directors, whose work sits a cut above the most usual horror fare with The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, which isn't quite horror unless you're terrified of Norway. The Lighthouse is unlike any other scary movies you've seen. Actually, it's probably unlike most movies you've seen. It's kind of hard to define The Lighthouse under one genre. It's unsettling and definitely makes me feel all heebly-jeebly watching it, but it isn't horror in the traditional sense. There's no monsters or slashers, just two men, a lighthouse, a whole lot of seagulls, and enough cabin fever-induced madness to shake a lobster at. A rookie lighthouse keeper, played by Robert Pattinson, is assigned to keep a lighthouse on a small isolated island off the coast of New England, under the supervision of the island's crusty old master, Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are some of the best working actors out there right now, and the two of these titans absolutely show up for this, carrying this two-headed character piece on their backs and speaking in some of the most hilariously memorable accents ever put to film. Seriously, Willem Dafoe's old nautical piratical accent in this thing needs to be taught in acting schools. I would do an impression, but I won't do it justice. The film is shot beautifully, the whole thing seeming like a mix between a bad dream and an avant-garde theater production, leaving you asking the entire time if anything you're seeing can be trusted, if any of it's even happening, or if the whole thing is all just one twisted nightmare between two very lonely, isolated men. Now, I can't say for sure if they went nuts because they weren't subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but I'm willing to bet that a little bit of entertainment from the best scary videos channel on the web might have helped some of that madness. So subscribe, maybe. Number 4. Annihilation. I've talked a bit about Annihilation before on this channel, and I will continue to do so until Annihilation gets the respect it deserves. That's my mission. I've never forgiven the movie-going populace for not seeing this one in theaters. Annihilation came to us from director and writer Alex Garland, who also gave us Ex Machina, a fantastic movie about having a crush on a robot. Annihilation is a cosmic horror story detailing the effects of after an asteroid crashes to Earth, and a mysterious alien presence known as the Shimmer begins to manifest across a quarantine zone in a forest outside an army base. Everything the Shimmer touches starts to blend together. Biological life merging, double helixes swirling in a big cosmic gumbo. The film is hauntingly beautiful as it is terrifying. Our protagonist Lena, played by Natalie Portman, is a US Army veteran who lost her husband in an unrelated combat mission. One day he shows up on her doorstep, convulsing violently, leading Lena towards the Shimmer, learning her husband was involved, she ventures forth with a group of fellow researchers and soldiers to uncover what lies at the heart of the shimmer, what's causing it, and if it can be stopped. The film is a visual treat with its lush vistas and uniquely terrifying monster designs. I've talked about Annihilation Bear before, and I will take any opportunity to talk about Annihilation Bear. I love Annihilation Bear. Slap a photo of him back there for me. Annihilation is the perfect kind of horror movie, simultaneously exploring complex themes of depression, grief, humanity's inherent nature and propensity towards self-destructive behavior, but it also asks even bigger questions like, wouldn't it be really yucky if a bear had a human skull inside its head that screamed like a dying human while it was roaring? Get you a horror movie that can do both, okay? Number 3, Jacob's Ladder. While the first 2 entries on our list were pretty recent and well received, I want to throw it back a couple decades for our next entry and highlight a cult classic that could always use a little bit more love. Jacob's Ladder details the story of Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran who 4 years later, after returning home from the war, struggles to readjust to his normal life. Not helping matters much, no doubt, is the fact that Jacob keeps seeing horrifying monstrosities surrounding him every day. It seems as if since he's come home, nothing has ever been the same. The film shows us life through Jacob's tormented eyes. As he tries to navigate through healing and overcoming his personal demons, he is constantly haunted by real-life demons that seem to have a very vested interest in him. Matters only serve to get a lot more confusing when Jacob learns that other members of his platoon, back from his army days, have all been suffering similar things, reporting seeing the same monsters and being haunted. Desperate to find the truth, Jacob seeks out the cause of what's happening to him and his old friends, and ends up descending down a path of madness, learning things no man ever should. Worth noting is just how influential Jacob's Ladder is, serving as one of the direct inspirations for the legendary Silent Hill series of games, with Silent Hill 2 in particular taking major inspiration from the film's plotline, monsters, twists, right down to the protagonists even wearing the exact same outfit as a little homage. Jacob's Ladder is a little older than some of the other entries on this list. It is absolutely worth a watch and still worth your time. A great performance out of Tim Robbins and one of the most wild twist ending horror movies ever had. A bunch have tried to copy this. I'm sure you've seen a million hack writers copy it, but no one did it as cool as when Jacob's Ladder did it, so there. And actually thinking about it, I shouldn't even mention a twist, so there was no twist. Everything in Jacob's Ladder happens very literally. Go into it knowing that, okay? Number 2, Sinister. Moving. It's always stressful, isn't it? It's a huge pain. Well, Sinister is a 2012 horror film about an everyday family moving houses and all the trials and tribulations that come with that, like having to update your postal code on your information, unpacking your stuff and figuring out where all your art books are gonna go, and finding out that you moved into a house where a series of grisly rituals happened, sacrificing the previous family who lived here, and it's all been filmed and kept in a box upstairs in the attic. You know, just regular stuff the kids go through all the time. A struggling true crime novelist is trying to chase his glory days and intentionally moves into a house he knows where ghastly deaths took place in order to get close to the story so he can better research it and write a bestseller. He discovers a box in the attic full of film of all of the crimes and becomes obsessed with uncovering and exposing what happened, mostly so he can make a quick buck and get himself back on top again and make the late night circuit. As his obsession grows, it starts to affect his family and children in concerning ways, as everyone in the family starts acting stranger, having visions, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes, leaving you wondering if there is something much, much deeper going on in this house beyond a floundering author chasing a bestseller. Now, if you haven't seen this one, it's definitely worth going into this one as blind as you possibly can, because the twists and turns totally make this one. I spent the entire runtime of this propped up on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding, hoping that everything would turn out to be totally okay, even though I knew better. It's a horror movie, things never go great. The movie's got a stellar sense of dread that refuses to let go once it starts, and only lets you breathe out once the credits roll, and even then, not for very long. Fantastic performances across the board, but a special shout out goes to Ethan Hawke, who makes this thing. Number 1, Hereditary. Now, there are a ton of movies that could easily have taken the number 1 spot here, and I thought pretty hard about making The Shining number 1, since, you know, it's kind of a classic, but I figured a lot of people have talked about The Shining, and then I remembered the experience of seeing Hereditary in a movie theater, and how it was the only time in my life I've ever seriously thought about leaving a movie theater because I thought I was gonna throw up on the seats. I was so scared and uncomfortable. Hereditary is a 2018 horror movie from visionary Ari Aster, who also gave us the psychological horror movie masterpiece Midsommar, so Aster really just bangs out the hits. Hereditary is about as peak A24 horror movie as it gets. One of those ones where the monster's really a metaphor for generational trauma and all all that. After the grand matriarch of a Midwestern family passes away, her daughter and grandkids begin to uncover the cryptic and terrifying truth behind their ancestry, trying desperately to escape the sinister legacy they've inadvertently inherited. This movie is terrifying in the worst of ways. It's not just jump scares or tons of blood. No. This is elevated horror. This is not your usual horror story. It really zeroes in on the way too close to home horror of watching a family break apart. It is gut-wrenchingly painful to watch, preying on really specific kind of fears. It's gonna get its hooks in you and have your teeth grinding for the full 2 hours runtime and for ages afterwards. If you've seen this, I dare you to look at a pigeon, a stop sign, cheese wire, or a treehouse ever the same after this movie. And staggering performances. Toni Collette goes for absolute gold and delivers one of the best performances I've ever seen in a horror movie, full stop. She needs an Oscar for most upsetting crying I have ever heard in a film, which is a category she would have no competition in. Hereditary might not be the goriest film or even the scariest movie I've ever seen or most upsetting. There's a bunch of Takashi Miike or Park Chan-wook films that would probably take that. But Hereditary is definitely one of the most viscerally scary movies I've ever seen. The kind that just sits in your gut and makes you think about it all day, like you were living through an actual nightmare. Watch only if you're truly brave. I know I made it sound absolutely horrible, but it is a great movie. Just don't be surprised if you don't sleep that night. Number 5, Renfield. I feel like this is the rare movie where I honestly don't need to see a single trailer or even hear a single fact or tidbit of trivia to know I want to see it other than one piece of information. Nicolas Cage plays Dracula in this movie. Okay, moving on. We're gonna go on to number 4. No, okay, I'll actually fill it out a bit. We'll talk about Renfield just a little bit. As if you need anything more than Nicolas Cage plays Dracula. Renfield is an upcoming horror comedy featuring the immortal Count Dracula, and I think he's played by, I don't know, some like B-movie actor or something, and his humble manservant Renfield, who's been indebted to Dracula for centuries and is growing more than a bit weary of it. The two of them find themselves in modern Louisiana, a far cry away from the Romanian castles the Count is used to, and trouble arises when his servant finds himself falling in love with a police officer and comedy ensues. Interestingly, this script was inspired by a pitch from Robert Kirkman. You probably know him as the creator of The Walking Dead and Invincible, and was adapted into a screenplay. Kirkman isn't particularly known for his comedy, he's definitely known for his violence and gore, so it's a bit of a step outside his comfort zone. Alongside Nicolas Cage in the starring role is an all-star cast of actors. Nicholas Hoult from Mad Max, X-Men, The Menu is playing the eponymous Renfield. Awkwafina is the police officer he finds himself smitten with, and we got Parks and Rec alum and Sonic the Hedgehog voice actor Ben Schwartz as a mop. Nicolas Cage in comedies is some of his best. The unbearable weight of massive talent was a real surprise hit for me. Definitely go see that. Nick Cage plays himself, it's fantastic. And if you've somehow done yourself the utter disservice of never having seen Vampires Kiss, I implore you, please go get that done. Since Nick Cage plays a vampire in that, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of the most insane performances he's ever given. Renfield is set to drop in April, and you can absolutely believe I will be there front row day one. And if you're looking for more scary movie content, true tales of terror, fake fibs of frights, ghouls, goblins, aliens, cryptids, and everything freaky under the sun and above it, well, have I got something for you. Is this playlist on Top 5 Scary? Click through, stay scared, but most importantly, stay subscribed, because we're trying to get those numbers up. Now let's keep going. Number 4, Scream 6. It's always someone you know. Although Sidney Prescott managed to finally shake Woodsboro's most infamous resident, it seems that the ghost face can't be put down just that easily. Scream 6 is a big departure for the franchise, taking place in New York instead of a small Californian town, and may I just say it's high time. You know, slashers have been acting like they're too good to make movie sequels about their bad guys going to space or going to New York anymore. Jason did it, and I guess we just decided it just wasn't vogue anymore, but hogwash, I love seeing Ghostface running around the Big Apple. Ghostface on the subway. He's not supposed to be there. What are you doing there, man? The torch of Final Girl has been passed from Sidney Prescott to Tara Carpenter, introduced in the previous film and played by everybody's favorite goth girl, Jenna Ortega. Some other reprising roles include Hayden Panettiere coming back to play Kirby, a fan favorite character from Scream 4 whose death kind of left a bad taste in all of our mouths. So seeing her come back is actually super cool. There was a little Easter egg that confirmed she was alive in Scream 5, so I'm very excited to see her come back. I am a huge Scream fan if that is not coming across. We're also going to see Scream 5's protagonist Sam Carpenter return, and series mainstay Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. No word on how horrifying her haircut's going to be. It would be a strange Scream film if it didn't have at least one cast member. Losing Neve Campbell and David Arquette definitely hurts, so one legacy member is more than enough. It's being directed by a duo of Tyler Gillett and Matt Bettinelli Olpin, who worked together to make the last Scream movie, which honestly I thought was pretty good. I know some people had some issues with it, but I really liked it. They also made Ready or Not and had previously collaborated on the horror anthology series VHS. I'm personally super excited for Scream. Of all the slasher franchises out there, and I might land myself in some hot water with this hot take, but I think Scream is the most consistent. I think all of the Scream movies are pretty good. Even the worst Scream movie, Scream 3, is still like leagues better than most of the Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. I just love Ghostface. I love that little goof. Although the loss of Wes Craven is definitely felt deeply, the previous film left me as a fan feeling like the series was being taken care of. The meta commentary was top notch, the scares were blood curdling, and there was a good amount of that Scream humor. I cannot wait to find out who's under that mask come March. Number 3, Evil Dead Rise. Groovy. Evil Dead has always been one of my absolute favorite horror movies ever. I love a horror comedy. If you couldn't tell already from my passion for Scream and my excitement for Renfield, and no one has ever done it better than Evil Dead 2, which might genuinely be one of my favorite movies of all time, let alone horror movies. I've probably seen that like 30 or so times. For all the quips, chainsaw arms, time travel, boomsticks, and gallons of fake blood, it's easy to forget that originally Evil Dead started as a low-budget horror movie trying to shock you to sickness with its gore and scares, and was trying to take itself a little bit seriously. The franchise tried to reboot itself about a decade ago, simply titled Evil Dead, hoping to recapture that same feeling of terror and a bunch of teens lost in a cabin. In a departure for the movies, Ash Williams and his chainsaw was nowhere to be found, and the comedy was completely absent unless you consider someone sawing their arm off with a bread cutter hilarious. And if you do, I don't really want to watch any like comedies with you. Well, Rise is set to try one more time at capturing that original gore fest. It seems like it's disconnected from the 80s films and the 2013 reboot and is doing its own thing. Evil Dead Rise sees a pair of estranged sisters reuniting in a cramped Los Angeles apartment. And their reunion is cut short after discovering a flesh-bound book, one Necronomicon Ex Mortis, in the sisters' building, which, well, if you know anything about Evil Dead, you know reading that book is very bad news and pretty much a guarantee that you're going to invite an army of flesh-eating demons into your world. If the trailer is anything to go by, expect Evil Dead Rise to be packed to bursting with gross-out gore, high-octane scares, and not a whole lot of one-liners. Bruce Campbell has an EP credit on this, but he's leaving the boomstick behind for this one. 3 seasons of Ash vs. the Evil Dead was more than enough for him and more than enough for me, so I'm just excited to see some new Evil Dead content regardless. The trailer was super promising and already had me scared, and if they can do that on a video I'm watching on my phone, I cannot even imagine how much popcorn I'm going to be flinging around the theater when I see this in April. Number 2, Saw X. Saw 10. Saw X? Saw 10. Well, we'll decide. I don't know what they want to call it. The games never end. So long as the sun still sets, they will continue making Saw movies. Death, taxes, they're gonna keep making Saw movies. Those are certainties of the world. There's always more inventive ways to show horrific dismemberments and really stretch the definition of what a game is. The franchise has been spinning its wheels for a little bit, with most fans agreeing that there hasn't been a truly great Saw movie in years. Saw 7, The Final Chapter, Jigsaw, and Spiral were all pretty weak entries that disappointed longtime fans. Saw The Final Chapter, ain't that ironic? We were all hoping to see a little bit more of John Kramer, less convoluted plot twists and retcons, and more of what Saw's all about, chaining people to radiators who probably didn't deserve that much torment. While Spiral seemed like a step in the right direction, it did underperform dramatically and wasn't exactly the reboot worthy of saving the series. So longtime Saw collaborators Kevin Grutart and Josh Stolberg came together to pen and direct a script for Saw X. Saw 10. At this time, very little is known about the 10th entry in the splattering series, other than that Tobin Bell, best known for his role as John Kramer and that funny little puppet, will be returning with a main character role. So we can expect lots of Kramer goodness, lots of pre-recorded messages about how much blood victims are going to have to shed to learn important life lessons. Exciting too is Shawnee Smith, who plays Amanda Young, Jigsaw's troubled apprentice from the first 3 Saw movies, is set to return as well. And reports say that it's going to take place at some point during the first and second film, which makes sense since, spoiler alert from a movie from 2004, Jigsaw dies in the 3rd one, so, wasn't a lot to do there. He's capable of a lot of things, but bringing himself back from the dead he hasn't quite nailed yet. Do I think Saw 10 is going to be the best movie ever? Probably not, who's to say, but I absolutely love the Saw series, bones and all, pun intended, for all its ridiculous soap opera level twists, secret apprentices, and just utterly insane death trap, and of course, that little puppet. So I'm excited to spend any time at all in that dirty bathroom one more time. Number 1, Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah, no, I'm being serious. I'm including this on the list because you know what? I'm genuinely looking forward to it. If you're unfamiliar with the IP somehow, Five Nights at Freddy's is a series of video games about a haunted pizzeria populated by an animatronic cartoon band who's a lot more lively than their stilted animations will suggest. They come to life at night and have a real hunger for just about anything that isn't animatronic. Now the series gets unbelievably complicated, so I'll let someone else more knowledgeable than me explain that. If you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, head on over to Top 10 Gaming. They do so much Five Nights stuff, you'll have stuff to watch for years. The mega popular smash hit indie game franchise blew up pretty much overnight. Going from one developer's passion project, a short half-hour scary point-and-click game, became a media empire, spanning 9 games, not including spin-offs, a series of novels and comic books, and a movie that's been in production hell since 2015. The Five Nights movie has passed from multiple creators and teams, and for ages, it seemed like it was never gonna actually materialize and just existed as a sort of vague tease. But as of 2023 though, we have found a team, we've found a script, and we've got some concrete evidence it exists. It's being actively filmed, and it's starring Josh Hutcherson as the doomed security guard, and horror icon Matthew Lillard, famous for playing Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, and the original Ghostface, spoilers, will be playing the villainous owner of the Fazbear franchise. Early reports too said the animatronics in the film will be all practical effects, which if done right will be premium unleaded nightmare fuel. I am a sucker for a practical effect in a horror movie. All bets are on for the Five Nights movie to be a pretty big hit. Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, is producing, and Matt Lillard has already agreed to do a trilogy of Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So watch this space when we do top 5 horror movies for 2024, and I mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in the #1 spot. Number 5, The Conjuring. Now if you're a fan of this channel, no doubt you know all about Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed demonologists with a storied career in investigating the paranormal and unknown. You probably knew as well that The Conjuring was based on real events, but how much do you know about the real story that inspired the mega hit? Well, just like the film, in 1971 the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 daughters. Almost as soon as they could start unpacking their things, however, they began to notice bizarre happenings around the home. It all started pretty small, just weird little things. Objects moving, a broom being found in a room different from where it was left. The girls would say that they'd see spirits floating around the halls, but you know how kids are. The mother, Carolyn, researched the house's history to see if there was anything that suggested it was a ground for spiritual activity. She discovered that the house had been home to one family for 8 generations. Not that scary. She also discovered that many members of this family all passed away under mysterious circumstances. Pretty scary. Now just like the film, they learned at one point the house was owned by a woman named Bethesda, who was thought to be a Satanist and a witch. One of Perron's daughters thought that Bethesda's spirit threatened her mother's presence. And just like in the films, the Warrens found their way to the Perrons and performed a seance to try and speak to Bethesda, and claimed they saw Carolyn Perron speaking in tongues during the seance. Now where the movie differs slightly is that in the film, Ed Warren performs an exorcism and heroically saves the family and cleanses the house. But in the real story, the Warrens were sent away because the Perrons were worried about Carolyn's mental health. They also did not perform an exorcism, as Lorraine Warren said it wouldn't have been appropriate for them as they weren't members of the ministry. The Perrons stayed in the house until 1980, when eventually the hauntings started to go silent. This might be one of the few times a horror movie based on a true story had a happier ending than the real story. Love horror movies? Me too. Stick around at Top 5 Scary for more stuff every day. Let's creep on creeping on. Number 4. The Amityville Horror. Another haunted house story, and wouldn't you know it, another one attached to Ed and Lorraine Warren. If there was a haunted house in the Midwestern United States in the 1970s and they made a movie about it, well by gum those 2 names will come up a lot. They were very busy. The Amityville Horror has been made into a movie a few times, first in 1979 and again in 2005, if you can remember that terrible period when Hollywood was dredging up every single horror franchise and rebooting them terribly. Both movies are based on a real-life famous haunting, however, and while details vary between the films pretty wildly, let's see how they stack up against the original case. In 1973, a man named Ronald DeFeo slayed his family in a brutal crime, claiming that he had heard voices that had commanded him to do it, and there was some entity in the house. 13 months later, the Lutz family bought the house. The realtors had warned them about the house's grisly past, but it didn't bother them. You know how the housing market is. A friend of the family told them that it would be wise to have the house blessed since since there could still be evil inside the walls. After the family moved in, they described all sorts of paranormal wrongdoings going on. Green viscous slime coming up the staircases, voices speaking out to them, telling them to get out, flies all over the house, and the family even seeing wild things like specters. Now that's all pretty bad, but the film adaptations really take it up to the extreme. In the films, the Lutz family faces spirits directly, seeing ghosts, the father even gets possessed and attacks the family dog. Now, nothing this extreme happened in the actual haunting case, but there was a photo that was released that appears to show a ghostly boy walking across a staircase. But there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not it's legitimate, or whether or not anything involving the haunting was legitimate at all, as there are many who feel that it was faked by the Warrens and hyped up a little bit to try and make it a much more interesting story so they could sell books or movies. Well, real or not, it definitely worked, as the book was a smash hit and there have been dozens of movies since, meaning we're not leaving Amityville anytime soon. Number 3. The Exorcism. Now, The Exorcism is an iconic horror movie and legendary story adapted from a novel. Not many people know that the novel and the film were based on a real-life exorcism of a boy named Roland Doe, or so we think, as his real name has never been cleared up. Living in Maryland, Roland lived a quiet, sheltered life, relying on his aunt for company, a noted occultist, and fascinated with the spirit world. She gifted him a Ouija board at a young age. After his aunt passed, it wasn't long before the family home started to experience a series of strange paranormal events. Like it always does, it started a bit small, just objects moving around the house or water leaking from all the pipes in the house, but then eventually it started to ramp up. It seemed like Roland had become possessed. He started to fall mysteriously ill, and red scratches appeared all over the boy's body. The family was put in contact with the clergy, who suggested they needed an exorcist to help them. Now, unfortunately, although in the film, Reagan only needed one exorcism, albeit a brutally rough one, Roland wouldn't be nearly that lucky. Roland was exorcised round the clock for weeks and weeks. Now, he never turned green and vomited up pea soup, nor did he ever twist his head all the way around, but they did report that he would growl gutturally in a voice that wasn't his. He would speak Latin, and even threatened the priests by saying that Satan had taken control of his soul. On one occasion, during an extreme exorcism, he broke free of his restraints when he was tied to a mattress and managed to slash at one of the priests using the buckle, similar to Reagan attacking her exorcisers multiple times in the film. After weeks of battling, eventually like a miracle, Roland woke and said he saw a vision of Saint Michael and Satan battling for his soul, and after that, he was freed. None of the priests were slain like in the film, and luckily after this harrowing experience, Roland was able to live a quiet, normal life and tried his best to live under the radar, not wanting any more attention than he'd already had. After reading about it in a newspaper, author William Blatty was fascinated by the case and inspired to write about an exorcism of his own, which would then become The Exorcism, and then the movie was made, and well, the rest is pretty much history. Number 2. Annabelle. Another famous story from the Warrens' legacy. We knew we'd be seeing them again. Based around probably the most famous and recognizable haunted item in the Warrens' Museum of the Occult, Annabelle. The real Annabelle is a cursed Raggedy Ann doll that was one of the first cases the Warrens ever investigated. Now, the real Annabelle already looks pretty unsettling and isn't the kind of thing I would ever give to a child, but her Hollywood glow-up made her even more terrifying. The story of the film and the legend of the real Annabelle differ pretty greatly though. In the film, Annabelle is given off as a gift from a husband to his pregnant wife, whereas in reality, the Raggedy Ann doll was given to a nursing student, Donna, by her mother as a small gift. The film does feature Donna and her roommate Angie speaking to the Warrens at the beginning, describing their experiences with the doll. That's kind of where the two stories stop being the same and start differing greatly. The original story, Donna claims that the doll would move around their home, appearing in random places, occasionally having red stains on her no one could explain. She would complain that her and her roommate would wake up covered in scratches, again, no one could explain. They said they would find notes scrawled in red writing across the home, reading cryptic things like "Help us" or "Help Lou," the name of Donna's roommate's fiance. The most extreme thing any of them ever reported was that Donna's fiance claims one night while staying over, he felt something crawling on his leg, and when he looked to see what it was, he saw Annabelle on his leg and claims the doll leapt up at him. He woke up the next morning completely unsure if what he had experienced was real or not. Now from there, they contacted a medium to arrange a seance to see if they were dealing with something truly evil. From here, the Warrens were put in contact to help them and take Annabelle off their friends. While the real story is no doubt spine-chilling, the movie got a lot more dramatic, involving satanic cults, deaths, house fires, and a whole lot more. But still, I probably wouldn't want to spend any time near the real Annabelle, just in case. Number 1. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven was a master of horror. I don't think it is completely fair to call him a visionary and an icon of the craft, giving us not just one, but two legendary classic horror movie franchises, A Nightmare on Elm Street and the satirical horror movie series Scream. Freddy Krueger is larger than life as a horror icon. He's incredibly popular, appearing in several of his own movies, even coming into some of Jason's movies, starring in a couple video games as a playable character in Mortal Kombat and Dead by Daylight. A horribly burned dream-invading ghoul, manifesting people's worst fear and attacking them in a place no one can help them and no one can believe them. He's terrifying, but by gosh do we love him. It's no wonder Freddy's had such scary staying power. But I bet you didn't know Wes Craven was inspired by a real-life horror story for Freddy. Don't worry, there's no real-life groundskeepers that were cast into a furnace, at least I think. Wes Craven was reading the LA Times one morning and he read an article that pierced him and stuck with him. It was about a refugee family that fled to the United States for the fear of their lives. The son of the family was plagued by nightmares and said that he was too afraid to sleep. When he finally found himself falling asleep in the middle of the night, he was screaming and passed away during a nightmare. This spoke to Wes Craven deeply, who sympathized that he was too afraid to sleep and no one would listen to his worries, and saddened at the idea of something that would attack someone while they were vulnerable and away from the protection of supervisors and guardians. From that tragic story, Freddy Krueger was born as a manifestation of this horrible concept that affected Wes Craven so deeply, trying to conjure up the most evil thing he could think of. Since then, Freddy's become a pop culture icon and is not without his legions of fans, but few know the true story behind the iconic slasher.